speaker, Sundar, Tommy Sundar, as we call him. He's going to talk about why UI automation sucks and why unit testing rocks. Sundar is a seasoned testing professional with over a decade of hands-on experience in delivering quality products with the right set of tools, processes, and frameworks. He has helped organizations scale by building teams, training, mentoring, and establishing a brand for the QA. He's a test architect, test strategist, mentor, speaker, a community volunteer, and he is part of the organizing team of our GTR 2020 as well. I would like to welcome Sundar to take it ahead for this wonderful and intriguing, and I'm sure that very interesting topic to unfold here. All yours, Sundar.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Aditya. Thanks for the nice introduction. Um, and proud to be a part of the ATR, ATA GTR organizing team as well. I hope a lot of folks out here can actually go through our ATA GTR websites. There are a lot of speaker lineups that we have curated and will be happy to bring to you. So please go ahead and register today. So having said that, my topic for today is a little controversial, but then I want to get your attention. I hope everybody can see my screen. So the topic is basically why UA automation sucks and all hail unit testing. Um, so I have nothing against unit testing. Sorry, UI testing. I love UI testing. I started my journey as an automation engineer with UI and API automation. But over the years, if you see, I have started feeling this frustration with UI automation, and there are a lot of pitfalls when it comes to UI automation, which I want to kind of discuss um, through the slide session, and then also make a case for unit testing. This is a area that is largely or vastly ignored by test engineers, but I think we as test engineers should actually start leveraging our knowledge about the programming language, about our systems, and then start deep diving into unit testing, which will actually help us save a lot in terms of time and also kind of ensure quality, and it helps you focus a lot in other areas of testing as well. And I'll also kind of wrap up the session with a quick how-to on where to get started and how to get started, maybe with a set of Q&As as well. Moving on, the pitfalls of UI automation. We all know almost all of these pitfalls, but just to kind of understand what actually frustrates us in terms of UI testing is web elements change. None of the web UI is actually going to be the same forever. Things change. So you will have to go back to your scripts and keep changing your scripts. UI is often lengthy. Sorry, UI test scripts are actually often lengthy, and it's always slow loading in case if the UI is also slow loading. I am not sure if everyone will say, "Hey, I love analyzing test reports, especially UI test reports." It's again, it's very cumbersome. Of course, there are very nice tools like Serenity BDD, which actually gives you a very good fundamental test report, which you can actually drill down and figure out where the problem lies. But again, analyzing a UI test report has always been a bone of contention for a test automation engineer, where in case if there are too many failures, you might just go ahead and ignore the report and only think of rerunning the test, right? Again, your UI automation is environment centric, so managing the test data, managing different elements, managing form factors, all that becomes a lot more cumbersome. And then I don't know if everyone has seen this, but I do see that there is too much tooling for UI automation, which actually says one thing to me, that this is a very large problem area, and then there are too many people who are actually putting their brains behind it to kind of solve it. But my question is it really required? Can we kind of settle down to maybe one or two tools and then bring down the quantum of tests that we write in UI and then move away to something that actually gives us solid results. And then, of course, there are a lot of other tools that actually helps us with element selection. And my friend Sanjay's Kropat, Selectors Hub is actually a nifty tool which every test automation engineer uses to select the elements. But again, the question lies as to, hey, can we go in depth? Do we have to put together all these tools to kind of spend all this time and energy into automation? The question remains unanswered. So again, when it comes to UI automation or any automation for that matter, we need feedback, and the feedback comes in as a report or a result, right? Most of the UI automation feedback is usually black box. We will have to go back, analyze the reports to see where exactly the problem lies. Sometimes it could be a network issue. Sometimes the UI would have changed and it wouldn't have been communicated. You may have to put a process in. You may have to put penalties in to kind of get things back in order, right? While your test scripts pass or failure is quantifiable, again, the quantified passes and failures are often debated. Like, let's say I might tweak the script to kind of come up with a pass, or I might end up seeing a lot of failures for no reason at all, right? So let's say I take my metrics for passes and failures for a period of time. More often than not, you might actually be debating as to, hey, on these days, the pass fail metric was actually not right because of so and so reasons, right? So that becomes a factor that actually says that UI test automation results are not often quantifiable. And again, it's not straightforward. The results are not very straightforward. Sometimes you may have to dig deeper to understand what went wrong. But again, I wouldn't discount the logic as to when things change, you get immediate feedback. That of course happens. But like, let's say out of 100, maybe I would say 80% of the time, you will have to actually drill down the feedback to understand what went wrong. Again, not always actionable. Again, if for some reason I say, hey, the performance of this UI is something that needs to be looked upon, the question remains as to, hey, which part is actually causing this problem? And then can I point it back into the code to say, hey, this is the reason where the UI actually I had a performance issue, right? So yeah, the feedback may not be always actionable. Of course, I can also argue the other way that there are some feedback, like let's say there is there is a change in the element, or some element doesn't load when I actually run the script pretty quickly, or there is a race condition even in the UI. Then of course I can always capture that in a UI automation. But again, the solid actionable feedback that actually points you back to the code, maybe not. And again, the feedback is slow to get. In let's say in a very small, well-constructed UI automation framework with very less scripts and which is very modular, of course you can run it in parallel and try and get feedback. But again, when you compare that with the other layers of your automation, maybe UI comes a little later into the test cycle, or even during the day when you're actually going about your day-to-day testing, right? Finally, the testing itself, UI automation is critical. Nevertheless, it's actually overused. I do see a situation where a lot of testing effort or automation effort is actually going into UI automation these days. And then it's become the norm, right? I mean, if anyone wants to enhance their QA career or their SDET career, the first thing they say is, hey, should I learn Java plus Selenium? Should I do Rust Assured and this and that? Of course, you shouldn't stop doing that. But is that what is a definition of an SDET? No, it's larger than what we think, isn't it? And then the time invested, the time that you invest to write the UI automation versus the results that you get is not often, it doesn't often match. So chances that you may be spending about 2 to 3 hours to write one script, and then you may be spending about 6 to 7 hours over a period of time in debugging the script whenever there is a UI test execution. And then there is a very high cost of maintenance if there is a UI change in a particular software, then or a web application for that matter. Then you may have to go to every part of your code to change the whole what is that script, right? So there is a lot of cost involved as well. So moving on, this is the state of software testing. Actually, the image to our left is basically how Google tests software, and the so basically they actually test as much as they can before they actually release a product to the market. And the way we test these days is we spend a lot of time in writing user interface tests, while we have actually started spending a considerable amount of time in API tests. Unit tests is where we can actually see more bang for our buck, if you look at it. So yeah, and just pivoting this to the agile test quadrant, it's the inverse of this pyramid, where you will see a lot of your coverage goes into UI tests, while a medium amount of coverage goes into your integration test or the API test, as you may call it, and then little less coverage on the user interface test. But it's the inverse of the pyramid that we actually come across today in most of the companies. So this has to change if it's not the case in your project. Then of course, that comes the regression nightmare. Here's a quick GIF that kind of tells you about when you add a new code to an existing feature, what happens. Yeah, so I'm sure everybody knows about unit tests, right? It's basically you test a particular unit of the code, a particular method inside a code, right? And it falls in the first quadrant of the agile quadrant, and then you actually move on to your component tests and your UI tests and other things. It falls in the other set of the agile quadrants, right? So are we, I mean, the question that I would like to ask ourselves is that, are we starting our test with unit tests? So let's leave the question about do we have code access or not, but are we actually thinking about contributing from a lower level? So yeah, so basically unit tests from my experience and from my understanding actually helps me enable a low level regression suite. So if I take a number of classes or methods or number of lines of code that I have in a project, in a software, and if I start covering each and every method or each and every unit or each and every function for that matter inside my code, I might actually be producing a lower level regression suite. And then it also helps teams to plan before coding. So unit testing kind of enforces that design principles. It also helps you and the developer keep in mind that there should be good amount of reusability when it comes to your software code, and then that will translate into your unit test as well, right? So yeah, it helps you plan before your software coding, as well as it helps you plan while you write your unit tests as well. So that kind of enforces a lot of good design principles, and also helps you with better code reusability, which also translates to lesser number of code, number of lines of code, and also translates to less duplications as well. Cost, in terms of cost, unit tests run along with your actual code, which means that if your code is changed and if something breaks, you get to know early. because when you're actually building, if your programmer or developer is actually building the code and it doesn't satisfy the unit test condition, your build will fail, right? And then the defect detection efficiency increases by about 50% compared to regression. And this is a ballpark figure that I came up with when we started running unit tests along with our project code. And then it's safe to refactor legacy code. Legacy code is something that's been lying around for some time, but it's making a lot of money for your company, right? So let's say you have a legacy code, but not many unit tests. Then now the question is, if a new engineer comes and wants to refactor the code, wants to make it much more optimized, he or she may not take those chances because it involves a lot of testing. It all involves a lot of new design principles and practices. So they may be very wary about changing the code. But then if they have a unit test, or if you would have written the unit test, I'm sure it's easier to change the code, because when you change the code and if it doesn't work properly, the unit test will actually test it and then point out the failure. So that way, unit test actually helps you refactor legacy code, and for that matter, it helps you refactor any code, new code or old code for that matter. Let's say I have written unit test today in my release cycle, and during the third week there is a change. I'm sure when you run the unit test, it's really going to help you figure out if the code runs as per the test condition. And then there are overheads. This is a bigger in UI testing, where in terms of unit tests, you do not have to worry about your environments because it runs along with your build. And then you do not have to write or come up with different data sets for each environment, because the data set is something that is usually fixed. So even if you're generating a build and then in under different conditions, you can actually run the data sets along with your unit tests, along with your unit test code, and you do not have to actually run it against an environment for you to test the code at all. And then there are test doubles, which basically helps you write your integration test a little early into the cycle using different libraries or techniques like mocks or stubs or something. And then test execution is really fast. So this is the best part actually. So there is this company called Launchable, which is actually coming up with the same idea for UI tests, where you can actually run a fast layer of UI tests for any code that is changed. But in unit tests, it's already available. Basically, whenever there's a change to the code, only then your build server is going to run that test. If there's no change to the code, then it will not run. So I'll give you an example. In our organization, we have about 25 lakh lines of code, or 2.5 million lines of code. So it took us like 3 hours to run the unit test for the first time, and then from the second time onwards, it was just 15 minutes. So we really did not have to waste more time. And then whenever there's a change to the code, again it runs within that 15 minutes gap itself. And then if there is good amount of unit tests, actually it expresses the behavior of your code. It tells you how your code works. So it makes it much more easier for a PR approvers, a pull request approver to actually review your code. And then it becomes a solid documentation for newcomers. I mean, I'm sure developers and test engineers hate to write high-level, low-level design documents. But if you can spend that time and write your unit tests, it's good enough. You can actually generate a documentation out of unit tests using libraries that are available, or basically you can use the unit test itself to understand. One classic example is that there is a I'm sure everybody knows about the programming language Golang. So if you want to learn Golang, there is a TDD-based Golang tutorial that is available on the web. So what it does is it lets you write the test code first, and then after you understood the test code, then they actually write the actual code that executes the test that the test code actually executes. So yeah, I mean, so that shows that from a documentation, from a unit test, you can actually form a documentation, and with that documentation, you can learn how your actual code works. And like we saw before, unit test helps us avoid a lot of code duplication. This is a very big problem if you have a lot of agile squads spread across your organization. Chances there could be a lot of teams that will actually be writing the same set of code. And if you have a good amount of unit tests, you can actually, what is that, help teams to kind of refactor these duplicate codes by running the unit test against their code. And finally, since you actually have a low-level regression suite, and since you can actually run these regression suites as frequently as possible, you will always find that your code is of good quality, and then there are very, very few occurrences that you may actually see in production, which will lead to happy customers. So this is an indicative test funnel that I worked upon from what we have in our organization. So we have about, like I said, 2.5 billion lines of code, about roughly 220,000 functions. All that we'll have to do is we don't have to cover the entire 2.5 million. So about 1.5 million lines of code is actually good enough to get 100% coverage in our unit test. It took us 3 hours to execute for the first time, and from the second run onwards, it was only the delta that started running, and it's taken care by JUnit. So it took us only 15 to 20 minutes to run. So that shows that how fast it is when it comes to unit test execution. Some of us actually ignore unit tests, even if we have a chance to do it. We and These are some of the common reasons that I keep hearing, at least from both the developer and the SDET community, is that the speed to market. So that's actually a myth. Not even Google or Facebook or Microsoft or IBM for that matter actually aims at speed to market. They really do not want to compromise on quality. So yeah, this is a myth. So if you have to take more time and then write more unit tests and then send it to production, so be it. So this is a reason that we really do not have to agree with. Unit testing is boring. Why do we have to write code to test code? It doesn't make sense. Of course, not. It's not the case. The more you start writing unit tests, the more hooked you'll be in terms of covering more lines of code. And it becomes a lot more interesting because you wouldn't have actually thought of these data sets that you may require for a particular function. But when you start writing this code, you will start understanding it better. So one of the classic examples I give is that let's have a function that is sum of a plus b, and then the function returns the output as c. So now think of the data sets that you may actually have to use to test this in your unit testing. So that's when people start realizing, hey, I can use 0, 0, I can use 0, 1, then I can use -1 and 0, then I can use -1, -2. Now, in all these conditions, what will be my output? So, and when you start writing this unit test to test that actual code, which is sum of a plus b, then you will actually you'll start thinking like a thinking in the direction that how much should be my coverage and what kind of data set will actually help me to achieve that amount of coverage. And then this is a problem with developers, not really us as test engineers. Quality is someone else's responsibility, and that unit test actually kind of fixes it. And then I think this is a classic problem that we have, which is a consumer programmer mindset and not a creator programmer. A consumer programmer is somebody who actually looks into someone else's GitHub or Stack Overflow to or use different tools and libraries to build a framework and then make something work. But a creative programmer is one who will actually start on a clean slate. Who, if given a clean slate, they might actually start working on um, different parts of the software, and then they will make something classic for everybody else to use. So we as test engineers actually we kind of shy away from unit tests because we are kind of, I think, tending towards the consumer programmer mindset. So we may have to come out of that. And then you as in we, in this case, we think that comments are best way to express code when unit tests can do it too. And this is a debate that I've been having in our automation team as well. I mean, we have a lot of comments in our automation framework. So why don't we write unit tests for the automation framework itself? So that way we can test our framework whenever there is a change. Somebody doesn't have to look at the comment, but the unit test let it validate whenever there's a framework related change. And we do not like to invest time, or sorry, we like to invest time in analysis. And I'm sure this is a myth. For UI automation, for sure, we do not like to actually invest our time in analysis. And that's the reason we invest a lot of time in building tools, in actually making things work better for UI automation. Whereas we'll have to spend a very little time in UI automation and then pivot all the way down to the test pyramid down with unit test automation. Finally, how do you get started? If you are new to unit testing, there are multiple ways to start. You can actually pick up a GitHub project, a good running GitHub project, and start writing your unit test, and then push your unit test to the open source code repository. And of course, I don't know if everybody is aware, now GitHub actually sponsors projects. So you may also start to make money in case if you start writing unit tests or maybe even contribute to the actual open source code. Come out of this become a creator programmer and come out of this consumer programmer mindset. And unit testing is much more enjoyable when you start writing TDDs. TDD is test-driven development. I'm sure everybody knows where you actually write the unit test first and then write the actual code to make the unit test pass. And that's how, like I said before, you can actually learn the Golang programming language as well, which is available on the web. If you have a legacy software and you do not know where to start writing unit tests when you fix bugs. That's a great way to start writing unit tests and also trying to understand the code. But finally, do not do away with UI testing. Of course, UI testing and UI automation is critical, but at the same time, try and minimize the number of scenarios to only critical user scenarios. So yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Awesome. I think Sundar, this was really wonderful. Guys, any questions? Sundar, can you go to the slide, the last one, unit test for testers? Like,
sure.
That was something which a lot of people would like to do.
Yeah, let me reshare it.
Yeah. So that you say that there is something called as sponsored projects in GitHub.
Yeah.
So can you show one, like for the benefit of our audience here, like how do we do that actually? If there's something like that we can sign up, is there a way that we can understand a little bit more on that?
Sure. I'm gonna have to search for it. It's been.
No worries. Okay, if it is possible, show. Otherwise, we'll basically look at it later.
Sure. Is it okay that I ping on the WhatsApp chat?
Yes. Yeah. You can. I can share it with the group as well.
Sure. Okay. I'll do that.
Yeah. Another quick question, Sundar, that I have is with a lot of people focusing on functional testing, and then that is probably the word that people don't like these days, manual testing. How easy it is for them to basically jump into something which is on the unit testing side?
I would say unit testing is quite easy. If you can, if you can learn a programming language, then it's a matter of just let's say, for example, if you can write a function in a programming language, you just have to think through how do you validate that function using, I mean, you have basically written the function in a code, but now you'll have to just think through how do you validate the function by writing a test code. So it's quite easy. It's not very hard at all. And more often than not, we'll be executing the function and then validating or asserting the output of the function. So anyone who has got some amount of knowledge in validating UI, in using assertions, unit testing is quite easy because you are going to use the same assertions in unit tests as well, just that you're going to execute the functions locally inside the code. So it is much more faster and much more efficient, and then you can also have a lot more test data that you can validate.
Awesome. And do you think that with the current development going on, the unit testing is being now requested by the independent testers to be done by, or is it the developers themselves who have obviously been doing unit testing, because that's what has been in the past? So is there a sea change now happening, and then unit testing is being given to the testers?
Yeah, so I see this way. So the SDET to developer line is actually now blurring across organizations. So that way, I do see that a lot of developers are actually writing unit tests while also SDETs are writing unit tests and then contributing back into the code. So say, for example, in our organization, a lot of test engineers have started writing unit tests. And from their understanding of unit tests, they are actually going back to the code and fixing bugs and also helping us accelerate the releases. So that's really where most of the product organizations are going these days. There is a dramatic change that I see in the market, at least from a product organization point of view.
Very nice. I think that is something that probably a lot of people should know about. And I know for sure that the programming knowledge is now sometimes looked at for everybody who's looking at testing job to get into, or basically for, not only at a fresher level, but for seniors as well, lateral as well. A lot of jobs are now seeking the SDET roles. So you're right, probably there.
Yeah, and just to add to the other side, where now I also see developers writing a lot of UI and API tests using Selenium and Trust Assured. So I would not say that totally discount that idea. Of course, that is something that we definitely needed. But the coverage is something that is something now we'll have to pivot back into the unit test.
Yeah, I agree completely. So it's a that thin boundary which is there. All right, so let me share the screen quickly. I think we are at the fag end of our meetup today. It's probably going to end early. So can we just hold on for a minute, and I'll probably like to thank Sundar here. Thanks a lot, Sundar. Can we have a round of applause for Sundar, guys? A big round of applause for enlightening us on this wonderful topic.
Thanks a
Obviously, it
lot.
was
Yeah.
very intriguing. And when you said UI testing sucks, obviously, with respect to unit testing, it definitely does. Okay, and we really were proud to hear this wonderful side of things as well. Maybe we would all like to make some money and see which are those sponsored projects as well. That is the fun part. All right, so here are two quiz questions for you guys. Are you ready? Last two questions, and then we'll probably call it off. Okay, so here's the question number one. Name the player who has hit two back-to-back centuries in IPL and got two back-to-back ducks in the same IPL. Anybody?
Shikhar Dhawan.
Yeah, guys, he just got out on duck today, and he has created a history that he got two ducks, and before that he got two centuries. So obviously this is something which I was observing while Sundar was giving his presentation. Sorry, Sundar, I was equally involved, mindful of your presentation as well. Let me create a quick question on that. Okay, one more question, guys, if you are ready. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What is the name of the lead female character in Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge?
काजोल.
अरे नहीं, पिक्चर में उनका क्या नाम था?
Simran.
So did it take some
Simran.
time to register? That is what I wanted to hear. See, we all remember Rahul and basically Shah Rukh Khan's name, right? But a lot of people forget about the heroine's name. So I thought that maybe it is some time that we start respecting females and women around us. So, and obviously we need more women speakers also in our virtual meetups. I think that's it from us, folks. I hope you enjoyed this 2-hour thing. missed a speaker. Pallavi is not well. Otherwise, we would have consumed 1 more hour and maybe a few more games and probably would have ended at 5:30 odd. But I guess short and sweet. This was wonderful meetup. Did you guys enjoy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yep,
So
yep.
can we have your cameras on and let's take a small group picture if we can. Thanks, Sundar.
Pro Bulb 2 isn't responding. Please check its network connection
Shakti,
and
thank
power
you. Shakti
supply.
has been waiting, and thank you so much for being part of this entire meetup as well, Shakti. Abhay, Vishwa, Neha,
Just
Prabhu, Ajay,
change the light bulb color.
Naga. Yeah. Oh, we just don't want to see your Bermudas, okay? Just the top is okay.
Well,
I think
there's some issue with my camera, I guess.
Okay, no problem.
I click on
I think
the
I can't see mine on the screen, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, Rakesh, hi. How are you? Anurag, great to see you. All right, so I don't know, maybe the camera or maybe no, people would not have expected me to ask them to share the camera. It's unfair because on these virtual meetups we probably a little more scared, and yeah, so that's it. I think wonderful guys having you here. Thank you so much for making this meetups wonderful by being with us. I think it was wonderful session. All of it, Shakti, yours was very enchanting. I would say it was an eye opener. Sundar was amazing as well. Prabhu opened up our mindset on visual test design. We will see more. I'll talk to him more and see how we can get him to do more with us. And thank you so much, guys. Wonderful to have you with us. And if you can, make sure that you don't miss out the ATA virtual Diwali celebration. I request you to be a part of that. That is something that is being planned. And we if you want to perform something, if you know singing, or for example you play a musical instrument or something, you would be given a chance. Okay, so what we are doing is we are trying out a platform which will be used in GTR. All the speakers from GTR would be present there, so don't miss a chance to be part of that. All right. So with that, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you back again. Right? Cheers. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.